Okay, so for this first video, I'm just going to show you how to draw a basic sine and cosine curve. Doing problem number 1, which is a negative cosine curve. The first thing you want to plot using the 5-point method is the midline, y equals -1. So you're going to put a midline down here at -1 on the y-axis. Okay. So because the amplitude's 1, you're going to go up by 1, and you're going to put your crest line. You're going to go down by 1 and make your trough line, because the amplitude is the distance from the midline to the trough, or the midline to the crest. Since it doesn't say any phase shift, we're going to put a starting line at 0, and because the wavelength is 360, I'll put an end line at 360. And because of certain symmetries in sine and cosine, I'm going to drop a line right down in the middle. Okay, and you should always have these 4 boxes. That is going to be where your sine or cosine curve goes. Negative cosine starts at a trough, and anywhere a sine or cosine wave starts, that wave ends in that same y value. And in between any 2 troughs or 2 crests is the opposite. So if I have 2 troughs, right in the middle is going to be a crest. And we know that a cosine curve has this sort of bell shape to it, and that takes care of negative cosine. The next one I want to do is we're going to do one with a phase shift. So number 5 here, we have to take some information out of this equation, and some things that we know are because there's no coefficient in front of this sign, the amplitude is 1. The midline, right, because of this k value, is 2. We know that the wavelength is 360 degrees. The reason we know that is our b value here is 1. There's an imaginary 1 as a coefficient. And the formula for wavelength is 360 divided by that b value. In this case, it's 1. So 360 divided by 1 is still 360. And then we have a phase shift of 180 degrees. And because this is an h value, this is 180 degrees to the left. Even though it's a plus, it is still to the left. Okay, so let's put our midline at 2. Our amplitude is 1. That means we go up by 1 and put a crest line. We go down by 1 and put a trough line. So now what I want to do, every time I do these with the phase shift, I want to outline where would I draw my 3 vertical lines if the phase shift wasn't there. So if that was the case, if this 180 was not here, I would have a starting line at 0. I would have a end of my wave at 360, and then right here in the middle at 180, I'd have my middle line. Right? So the idea here is I want to take all of these lines and I want to move them 180 degrees to the left. Take each one of those where they would be and move them to the left 180 degrees. Now, because it's 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces to 120, you do 120 divided by 4, you can figure out that each one of these boxes is worth 30. Okay? So if I want to take this line and move it 180 degrees, I need to count, right? 30, 60, 90, 120, 150, 180. So I've moved that line 180 degrees to the left. Now this is my new starting point. Okay. Now I'm going to take the middle line and I'm going to move that 180 degrees to the left, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 boxes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I happen to be right at the origin. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for where my wavelength ends. Okay, so I've taken all of those original lines and I moved them to the left by 180. And now I just got to draw a sine curve, and we know a positive sine curve, well, all sine curves start at 0 in the midline, and a positive sine curve starts off with a crest, whereas a negative sine curve starts off with a trough. So a positive sine curve starts off with a crest. Okay, once you reach midway, you should be back to the midline, and then you get a trough here and back up to the midline. Okay, so that's a sine curve with a phase shift of 180 degrees.